Imagine walking down a busy street, seeing an old man collapse on the ground, and nobody stops. Everyone just walks past as if his life doesn't matter. But one black woman, a stranger with nothing to gain, chose to kneel beside him. What she did next will make you emotional. Listen to the story to the end, like and comment where you are listening from. The old man's body hit the cold concrete with a sickening thud that echoed through the busy Chicago street. His worn-out sneakers twisted at an odd angle, and his faded brown jacket spread around him like broken wings. Blood slowly pooled beneath his gray hair as hundreds of people walked past him as if he were invisible. Business suits stepped over his outstretched arm. High heels clicked around his head. Shopping bags swayed past his face. Not one person stopped. Not one person cared. But then she did. Maria Johnson, a 34-year-old nurse from the South Side, dropped her grocery bags and rushed to the old man's side. Her dark hands shook as she checked his pulse, her heart pounding as she realized something that would change both their lives forever. Something that no one else walking by could have possibly known. Something that would soon make headlines across the entire country. But to understand why this moment was so shocking, we need to go back to where it all began. 3 hours earlier, the morning sun painted the streets of downtown Chicago in golden light. Maria Johnson walked slowly down Michigan Avenue, her nurse uniform still wrinkled from her 12-hour shift at Chicago General Hospital. Her feet hurt, her back ached, and her bank account was almost empty. Again, she stopped at the small grocery store on the corner, the same one she visited every week. Maria counted the crumpled dollar bills in her wallet, $23.50. That had to last her until next Friday's paycheck. Just the basics, she whispered to herself, like she did every week. She picked up a loaf of bread, some peanut butter, and a small carton of milk. As she walked to the checkout counter, she noticed Mrs. Chen, the elderly store owner, watching the news on a small TV behind the register. "Another rich person got richer today," Mrs. Chen said, shaking her head. "Look at this guy." On the screen, a tall man in an expensive suit stood in front of a massive building with Harrison Enterprises, written in golden letters. The reporter was talking about how Robert Harrison Jr. had just signed a deal worth $500 million. $500 million, Maria repeated softly. I can't even imagine that much money. She thought about her own struggles, the rent that was due in 3 days, the medical school loans that seemed to grow bigger every month, the dreams of becoming a doctor that felt further away with each passing year. Must be nice to never worry about money, Mrs. Chun said as she rang up Maria's groceries. Maria nodded and paid for her food. As she walked out of the store, she couldn't stop thinking about the man on TV. What would it feel like to have so much money that you could help anyone you wanted? To never have to choose between paying rent and buying groceries? She walked slowly down the street, lost in her thoughts. The city was waking up around her. People rushed past her, talking on their phones, checking their watches, living their busy lives. That's when she first saw him. An old man was sitting on a bench near the bus stop. His clothes were torn and dirty. His hair was messy and gray. His shoes had holes in them, and his thin body shook in the cold morning air. He looked hungry. He looked tired. He looked forgotten. Maria felt her heart break a little as she watched him. She knew that feeling of being forgotten, of being invisible, of wondering if anyone in the world cared if you existed. She looked down at her grocery bag, then back at the old man. She only had enough food for 3 days. If she gave him something, she would have to go hungry. But something in his eyes made her stop walking. The old man wasn't asking for money. He wasn't holding a sign. He was just sitting there, staring at the ground, as if he had given up on the world completely. Maria made a decision that surprised even herself. She walked over to the bench and sat down next to him. "Good morning," she said softly. The old man looked up at her with tired blue eyes. His face was wrinkled and weathered, like someone who had lived through many hard years. "Morning," he replied in a voice that was barely a whisper. "Are you hungry?" Maria asked. The old man's eyes filled with tears. He nodded slowly. Without saying another word, Maria opened her grocery bag and handed him the entire loaf of bread. "I can't take this," the old man said. "You bought this for yourself." "I insist," Maria said with a gentle smile. "My name is Maria. What's yours?" "Henry," he said quietly. "Henry Harrison." Maria didn't notice how his last name was the same as the rich man she had just seen on TV. She was too focused on the sadness in Henry's eyes. "Well, Henry Harrison, it's very nice to meet you," she said. They sat together on the bench as Henry ate the bread. Maria could tell he hadn't eaten in days by the way he carefully chewed each bite, as if he wanted to make it last forever. "Why are you being so kind to me?" Henry asked. "Most people pretend they can't see me." Maria thought about his question for a moment. "Because everyone deserves to be seen," she said. "Everyone deserves to matter." Henry looked at her with surprise. It had been so long since someone had treated him like a real person. "You have a good heart, Maria," he said. "The world needs more people like you." They talked for almost an hour. Henry told her about his life, though he left out many important details. He told her about feeling alone and forgotten. He told her about missing his family. He told her about the mistakes he had made that led him to living on the streets. Maria told him about her dreams of becoming a doctor. She told him about working double shifts at the hospital just to pay her rent. She told him about how hard it was to keep hoping when everything seemed impossible. "Don't give up on your dreams," Henry said. "Sometimes help comes from places you never expect." After they finished talking, Maria had to leave for another shift at the hospital. But something made her write her phone number on a piece of paper. "If you ever need anything, please call me," she said, handing him the paper. Henry stared at the phone number as if it were made of gold. "No one has given me their phone number in 15 years, he whispered. Maria smiled and walked away, not knowing that this simple act of kindness would soon change everything. But as she walked toward the hospital, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something special about Henry Harrison. Something important that he wasn't telling her. She had no idea how right she was. For the next 2 weeks, Maria looked for Henry every morning on her way to work. Sometimes he was there, sometimes he wasn't. When she found him, she always shared whatever food she had. They became friends in the way that only two people who understood loneliness could. Henry never asked for money. He never asked for anything. But Maria could see that he was getting weaker. His cough was getting worse. His hands shook more than before. "You should go to the hospital," Maria told him one Tuesday morning. "Can't afford it," Henry replied. "I work there. I could help you get seen by a doctor." Henry shook his head. "I've been taking care of myself for a long time. I'll be fine." But Maria could see that he wasn't fine. She worried about him every day. Then came the morning that changed everything. Maria was running late for work because she had stayed up all night studying for her medical school entrance exam. She was tired, stressed, and worried about paying her bills. As she hurried down Michigan Avenue, she saw a crowd of people gathered around something on the sidewalk. Everyone was walking around whatever it was, but no one was stopping to help. Maria pushed through the crowd and saw what everyone was avoiding. It was Henry. He was lying on the cold concrete, unconscious. His face was pale, and his breathing was shallow. A small cut on his forehead was bleeding. "Someone call 911, Maria shouted as she knelt down beside him. But everyone just kept walking. Business people checked their watches and hurried past. Shoppers stepped around them like they were obstacles in the road. Even teenagers with their phones just took pictures and kept moving. "Please," Maria called out. "This man needs help." No one stopped. No one cared. Maria felt her heart breaking as she realized that in a city of millions of people, she and Henry were completely alone. She pulled out her cell phone and called 911 herself, then checked Henry's pulse. It was weak but steady. She used her nursing training to make sure he was breathing properly and tried to keep him warm with her jacket. "It's going to be okay, Henry," she whispered, even though she wasn't sure if he could hear her. "I'm not going to leave you." As they waited for the ambulance, something fell out of Henry's torn jacket pocket. It was an old, faded photograph. Maria picked it up and nearly dropped it in shock. The photograph showed a much younger Henry standing next to a tall man in a business suit. They were both smiling and had their arms around each other. In the background was a building with golden letters that Maria recognized. Harrison Enterprises. The man in the suit looked exactly like the wealthy businessman she had seen on TV. Robert Harrison Jr. Maria stared at the photograph, her mind racing. Henry Harrison. Robert Harrison Jr. Harrison Enterprises. Could it be possible? Before she could think about it more, the ambulance arrived. The paramedics quickly loaded Henry onto a stretcher and into the ambulance. "Are you family?" one of the paramedics asked Maria. "No, but I'm his friend. I'm also a nurse at Chicago General. Can I ride with him?" The paramedic nodded, and Maria climbed into the ambulance, still holding the mysterious photograph. As the ambulance raced through the streets of Chicago, Maria looked down at Henry's peaceful face and realized that this forgotten old man might be hiding the biggest secret of all. A secret that was about to turn both of their worlds upside down. The ambulance pulled into the emergency room at Chicago General Hospital, and Maria felt her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. She had so many questions, but first, she had to make sure Henry was going to be okay. As the paramedics wheeled Henry into the emergency room, Maria's supervisor, Dr. Patricia Williams, looked surprised to see her. "Maria, what are you doing here? Your shift doesn't start for 2 hours." "I found this man unconscious on the street," Maria explained quickly. "His name is Henry Harrison. I think he fainted from hunger and exhaustion." Dr. Williams looked down at Henry with professional concern. "Do you know anything about his medical history?" "Not much," Maria said, "but I've been worried about his health for weeks. He's been living on the streets, and I don't think he's been eating regularly." As Dr. Williams and the other medical staff worked to stabilize Henry, Maria sat in the waiting room, staring at the photograph she had found. The more she looked at it, the more certain she became. This wasn't just any homeless man she had been helping for the past 2 weeks. This was someone important. Someone who belonged to a family that most people in Chicago knew by name. But if that was true, then why was Henry living on the streets? Why was he hungry and alone? And most importantly, why didn't his family know where he was? Maria pulled out her phone and searched for Robert Harrison Jr. on the internet. Dozens of articles came up about the successful businessman and his company. She scrolled through them until she found what she was looking for. A family photo from 10 years ago. Robert Harrison Jr. stood in the center of the picture, wearing an expensive suit and smiling at the camera. Next to him was a beautiful woman and 2 young children. And on his other side, looking much healthier and happier, was Henry. The caption under the photo read, "Robert Harrison Jr. celebrates his company's anniversary with his family, including his father, Henry Harrison, founder of Harrison Enterprises." Maria's hands shook as she read the words again. Henry Harrison, founder of Harrison Enterprises. The homeless man she had been sharing her food with for 2 weeks was the father of one of the richest men in Chicago. He was the founder of a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But how had he ended up living on the streets? And why didn't his son know where he was? Before Maria could research any further, Dr. Williams came out of the emergency room. "How is he?" Maria asked, jumping to her feet. "He's stable," Dr. Williams said. "You were right. He collapsed from malnutrition and dehydration. His blood sugar was dangerously low, and he's showing signs of pneumonia. If you hadn't found him when you did." Dr. Williams didn't finish the sentence, but Maria understood. Henry could have died on that sidewalk while hundreds of people walked past him. "Can I see him?" Maria asked. "He's conscious but very weak," Dr. Williams said. "But Maria, there's something else. He doesn't have insurance, and his treatment is going to be expensive. The hospital is going to need someone to guarantee payment or what? Or we'll have to transfer him to the county hospital once he's stable enough to move." Maria knew what that meant. The county hospital was overcrowded and understaffed. Henry wouldn't get the care he needed there. She thought about the photograph in her pocket. If Henry really was Robert Harrison Jr.'s father, Then money wouldn't be a problem. She could call Harrison Enterprises and explain the situation. But something held her back. There had to be a reason why Henry was living on the streets instead of in a mansion. There had to be a reason why he had never mentioned his famous son, even when he was hungry and cold and alone. Maybe calling Robert Harrison Jr. wasn't the answer. Maybe Henry didn't want to be found. Maria made a decision that surprised even herself. "I'll guarantee his payment," she said. Dr. Williams looked at her with concern. "Maria, do you understand what you're saying? His treatment could cost thousands of dollars. You're a part-time nurse. How can you possibly?" "I'll find a way," Maria said firmly. "He's my friend. I won't let him be transferred somewhere he won't get proper care." Dr. Williams stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You have a good heart, Maria Johnson," she said. "But I hope you know what you're doing." As Dr. Williams walked away, Maria sat back down in the waiting room chair. She looked at the photograph one more time, then carefully put it back in her pocket. She had just promised to pay thousands of dollars she didn't have for a man who might be worth millions of dollars. She was risking her entire financial future for someone who had kept his identity secret from her. But as she thought about Henry's kind eyes and gentle smile, she knew she had made the right choice. Some things were more important than money. Some things were worth any risk. She just hoped that when Henry woke up, he would trust her enough to tell her the truth. Because Maria had a feeling that the truth was going to be more complicated than anything she could imagine. 2 hours later, a nurse came to tell Maria that Henry was awake and asking for her. Maria walked into his hospital room and saw him looking small and frail in the big hospital bed. "Maria," he said weakly, "you saved my life. How are you feeling?" she asked, sitting down in the chair beside his bed. "Better, thanks to you." Henry's eyes filled with tears. "The doctor told me you guaranteed payment for my treatment. Maria, you don't understand. This could cost more money than you have." "Everyone deserves medical care," Maria said. "Don't worry about the money." Henry stared at her in amazement. "You would risk your own financial future for a homeless old man you barely know?" "I would risk it for a friend," Maria replied. Henry was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached under his pillow and pulled out the old photograph. "You saw this, didn't you?" he asked. Maria nodded. "I recognized the building. And the man standing next to you. Then you know who I really am." "I know who you used to be," Maria said carefully. "But I don't know why you're not there anymore." Henry's face filled with sadness and regret. "It's a long story, Maria, and not a very happy one." "I have time," she said. Henry looked at her for a long moment, as if he were trying to decide whether to trust her with the truth. "My son and I had a terrible fight 5 years ago," he began slowly. "The worst fight we ever had. Things were said that can never be taken back. I was proud and stubborn, and so was he. I walked out that day and swore I would never go back." "But surely he's been looking for you," Maria said. Henry shook his head. "I made sure he couldn't find me. I changed my name, avoided all the places he might look. I wanted to disappear completely." "But why?" Maria asked. "He's your son." "Because I was ashamed," Henry admitted. "The fight was about the company, our family company that I built from nothing. Robert wanted to expand into businesses that I thought were wrong, harmful. I told him he was becoming greedy and heartless." Henry paused, his voice becoming even quieter. "He told me I was old and foolish, that the world had passed me by. He said the company would be better off without me. So I gave him what he wanted. I signed over my shares and left." "And you've been living on the streets ever since?" "Not at first," Henry said. "I had some money saved, but I made some bad investments, trusted the wrong people. Within 2 years, I had lost everything. I was too proud to go back to Robert and admit I had been wrong." Maria felt her heart breaking for both Henry and his son. Maybe he's not the same person he was 5 years ago. Maybe he regrets what happened too. "Maybe," Henry said sadly. "But it's too late now. Too much time has passed. Too many harsh words were spoken." "It's never too late for family," Maria said firmly. Do you want me to call him? No, Henry said quickly. Please, Maria, promise me you won't contact him. This is my burden to carry, not yours. Maria looked into Henry's pleading eyes and felt torn. She wanted to help heal this broken family, but she also wanted to respect Henry's wishes. I promise, she said finally. Henry relaxed back into his pillows. Thank you. You've already done more for me than I deserve. What will you do when you get out of the hospital? Maria asked. I don't know, Henry admitted. I suppose I'll go back to the streets. No, Maria said firmly. I have a small apartment. You can stay with me until you figure things out. Henry stared at her in shock. Maria, I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. But you barely know me. And after what you've learned about my family situation, what I've learned is that you're a good man who made some mistakes and is too proud to fix them, Maria said. That doesn't change anything. Henry began to cry. Why are you being so kind to me? You could call my son and collect a huge reward. You could solve all your financial problems in one phone call. Because that's not who I am, Maria said simply. And I don't think that's who you are. Neither of them knew that Robert Harrison Jr. was about to make a decision that would bring the past crashing into the present in the most dramatic way possible. And neither of them knew that Maria's simple act of kindness was about to set in motion a chain of events that would shock the entire city of Chicago. The story was just beginning. But first, Maria had to keep a promise that was about to become impossible to keep. 3 days later, Maria sat in her tiny apartment at 2 a.m., staring at a stack of medical bills that made her hands shake. The numbers seemed to grow bigger every time she looked at them. $47,000. That's what Henry's hospital treatment had cost so far. And he still needed at least another week of care. Maria had already maxed out her credit cards, borrowed money from friends, and taken out a loan against her car. She was drowning in debt for a man whose son could pay the entire bill with pocket change. But she had made a promise. And Maria Johnson had never broken a promise in her life. She was about to learn that some promises are impossible to keep. Her phone rang, cutting through the silence of her apartment. The caller ID showed Chicago General Hospital. Maria's heart stopped. It was 2 a.m. Hospitals only called at 2 a.m. when something terrible had happened. Hello? She answered, her voice shaking. Is this Maria Johnson? The voice belonged to Dr. Williams, and she sounded exhausted. Yes, what's wrong? Is Henry okay? Maria, you need to get down here right now. Something has happened. Something big. What kind of something? Maria asked, already reaching for her coat. I can't explain over the phone. Just get here as fast as you can. And Maria. Yes. Prepare yourself. Your life is about to change forever. The line went dead. Maria ran through the empty streets of Chicago, her mind racing with terrible possibilities. Had Henry's condition gotten worse? Had he died? Had the hospital discovered she couldn't actually pay for his treatment? When she arrived at Chicago General, she immediately knew something was very wrong. There were news vans parked outside the hospital. Reporters with cameras were standing near the entrance. Security guards were blocking the main doors. Maria had never seen anything like it. She managed to sneak in through the staff entrance and found Dr. Williams waiting for her in the hallway. The doctor's face was pale, and her hands were shaking. What's going on? Maria asked. Why are there reporters outside? Because about an hour ago, Robert Harrison Jr. showed up at this hospital demanding to see his father. Maria felt the world spinning around her. How did he find out Henry was here? That's what I want to know, Dr. Williams said, her voice sharp with suspicion. The only people who knew Henry's real identity were you and me, and I certainly didn't call anyone. I didn't either, Maria protested. I promised Henry the first wouldn't contact his son. Then how do you explain this? Dr. Williams held up her phone and showed Maria a news article that had been posted just minutes ago. The headline read, Missing Billionaire Founder Found Living on Chicago Streets. Below it was a photo of Henry being wheeled into the hospital on a stretcher, with Maria walking beside him. Maria's heart sank as she read the article. It described how Henry Harrison, the founder of Harrison Enterprises, had been missing for 5 years. It talked about the mysterious circumstances of his disappearance and the massive search efforts his family had undertaken. And at the bottom of the article was the most shocking part of all. Robert Harrison Jr. has offered a $10 million reward to anyone who provides information leading to his father's safe return. $10 million. Maria stared at the number, her mind struggling to process it. $10 million was more money than she could spend in 10 lifetimes. It was enough to pay off her debts, finish medical school, and help dozens of other people in need. Maria, Dr. Williams said quietly, "Did you know about this reward?" "No," Maria whispered. "I had no idea." But even as she said it, she wondered if it would have made a difference. If she had known about the reward 3 days ago, when Henry was dying on the sidewalk, would she have called his son? She wanted to believe the answer was no. But staring at those impossible numbers, she wasn't entirely sure. "Where is Henry now?" Maria asked. "That's the other problem," Dr. Williams said. "He's barricaded himself in his room and refuses to see his son. Robert Harrison Jr. is threatening to call his lawyers and have the hospital shut down if we don't let him in. The reporters are going crazy trying to get the story. And the police are here trying to keep everyone calm." "I need to talk to Henry," Maria said. "I was hoping you'd say that. You're the only person he trusts right now." Dr. Williams led Maria through the hospital corridors, past security guards and curious staff members. When they reached Henry's room, Maria could see Robert Harrison Jr. standing in the hallway with several men in expensive suits. He was exactly as she had seen him on TV, tall, confident, and clearly used to getting his way. But right now he looked frustrated and desperate. "That's her," she heard him say to one of his associates as she approached. "That's the woman who found my father." Robert Harrison Jr. walked toward Maria with determined steps. Up close, she could see that his eyes were red, as if he had been crying. "Ms. Johnson," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Robert Harrison Jr. I understand I owe you an enormous debt of gratitude." Maria shook his hand cautiously. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Robert said firmly. "You did what no one else would do. According to the witnesses we've interviewed, dozens of people walked past my father when he collapsed. But you stopped. You saved his life." Maria felt uncomfortable with his praise. "How did you find out he was here?" Robert's face darkened. "Someone sent an anonymous tip to our tip line this morning. They provided his location and this photo." He showed Maria a picture on his phone. It was a photo of her and Henry sitting together on the bench 2 weeks ago, sharing the bread she had given him. "Someone has been watching and photographing you both for weeks," Robert continued. "They waited until the perfect moment to claim the reward." Maria felt sick. Someone had been following them, treating Henry's suffering like a game, waiting for the most profitable moment to turn him in. "Who was it?" she asked. "They demanded anonymity," Robert said. "But they're collecting $10 million for a photograph while you're the one who actually saved his life." The injustice of it hit Maria like a punch to the stomach. She had bankrupted herself to save Henry, while some stranger with a camera was becoming a millionaire. "Ms. Johnson," Robert continued, "I want to make this right. I want to give you the reward. You're the one who deserves it. $10 million. The words echoed in Maria's mind. Her financial problems would disappear. Her dreams of medical school would become reality. She could help so many people with that kind of money. But then she thought about Henry, locked in his hospital room, refusing to see the son he had been separated from for 5 years. "I need to talk to Henry first," she said. Robert's face fell. "He won't see me. He told the nurses that he doesn't want anything to do with me or my money. Ms. Johnson, I've been searching for my father for 5 years. I've hired private detectives, posted rewards, checked every hospital and shelter in the country. And now that I've finally found him, he won't even look at me." For the first time since Maria had met him, Robert Harrison Jr. looked like a scared, heartbroken son instead of a powerful businessman. "Let me talk to him," Maria said gently. Maybe I can help. Maria knocked softly on Henry's hospital room door and heard his weak voice tell her to come in. When she entered, she found him sitting up in bed, staring out the window with tears in his eyes. You heard, he said without looking at her. Henry, your son is here. He's been looking for you for 5 years. I know. Henry's voice was filled with pain. But I can't face him, Maria. Not after what I said to him. Not after how I've been living. He doesn't care about any of that, Maria said, sitting down beside his bed. He just wants his father back. You don't understand, Henry said, finally turning to look at her. The things we said to each other, they can't be taken back. I called him greedy and heartless. I told him he wasn't the son I raised. What did he say to you? Henry's face crumpled with grief. He said I was a foolish old man who was holding the company back. He said he wished I would just disappear and leave him alone to run things properly. Henry, people say things they don't mean when they're angry. I'm sure he regrets. He got his wish, didn't he? Henry interrupted. I disappeared. I left him alone. And look how successful he's become without me. Maybe he was right. No, Maria said firmly. He wasn't right. And neither were you. You both said cruel things because you were hurt and angry. But that doesn't mean you can't fix this. It's too late, Henry whispered. Look at me, Maria. I'm a broken-down old man who's been living on the streets. He's a successful businessman worth hundreds of millions of dollars. We're not the same people we were 5 years ago. You're right, Maria said. You're not the same people. You've both learned and grown. Maybe that's exactly why you need each other now more than ever. Henry was quiet for a long moment. There's something else, he said finally. Something I haven't told you. What? The fight we had. It wasn't really about business. That was just the surface. The real fight was about my wife, Robert's mother. Henry's voice became very quiet. She had been sick for months, and I was spending all my time taking care of her instead of running the company. Robert thought I should put her in a care facility so I could focus on work. I thought he was being heartless, caring more about money than his own mother. What happened? She died 3 weeks after our fight. Robert came to the funeral, but we barely spoke. We were both grieving, both angry, both stubborn. After the funeral, I packed a bag and left. I told myself I would come back when I was ready to forgive him. But you never did. I kept waiting for him to call me first, and he probably kept waiting for me to call him first. 5 years passed, and neither of us was willing to take the first step. Maria felt her heart breaking for both father and son. Henry, he's taking the first step right now. He's standing outside your door, begging to see you. But what if he's only here because I'm in the hospital? What if he feels obligated to help me but doesn't really want me back in his life? There's only one way to find out, Maria said. You have to talk to him. Henry looked terrified. I don't know if I can. Yes, you can, Maria said. Because you're braver than you think. And because you love him. What if he doesn't love me anymore? Then you'll know you tried. But Henry, I've seen that man in the hallway. He's not here out of obligation. He's here because he's been missing his father for 5 years. Henry stared at the door for a long moment, as if he could see through it to where his son was waiting. Will you stay with me? He asked. When I talk to him? If that's what you want. Henry took a deep breath. Okay, ask him to come in. But Maria. Yes. If this goes badly, if we just end up hurting each other again, promise me you'll take the reward money. Promise me you won't let your kindness ruin your life. Henry, promise me. It's the only way I can do this. Maria looked into his pleading eyes and nodded. I promise. She walked to the door and opened it. Robert Harrison Jr. was still standing in the hallway, surrounded by his associates and hospital staff. He's ready to see you, she said. Robert's face filled with hope and terror. Is he? How does he seem? Scared, Maria said honestly. Just like you. Robert nodded and walked toward the door. Then he stopped and turned back to Maria. Whatever happens in there, he said, I want you to know that you've given me the greatest gift I could ever receive, the chance to see my father again. Just remember, Maria said softly, he's given you the same gift. Robert smiled for the first time since Maria had met him, then walked through the door to face his father. Maria started to follow, then stopped. Maybe they needed this moment alone first. She stood outside the door, listening to the sound of two voices she had grown to care about. "Dad?" she heard Robert say, his voice cracking with emotion. "Hello, son," Henry replied, and Maria could hear the tears in his voice. For a moment, there was only silence. Then she heard something that made her own eyes fill with tears. The sound of Robert Harrison Jr., one of the most powerful men in Chicago, crying like a little boy. "I'm so sorry, Dad," he sobbed. "I'm so sorry for what I said to you. I've regretted it every single day for 5 years. I'm sorry too, son. I was wrong about so many things. I looked for you everywhere. I never stopped looking. I know. I heard about the reward, about the private detectives. I wanted to come home so many times, but I was too ashamed." "Ashamed of what? Dad, you built that company from nothing. You taught me everything I know about business and about life. But I called you heartless. I said you weren't the son I raised. You were right to be angry. I was so focused on expanding the business that I forgot about the people who mattered most. Including you. Including Mom." Maria heard Henry gasp. "Son, your mother's death wasn't your fault. But I wanted to put her in a care facility instead of letting you take care of her at home. What kind of son does that make me? It makes you a son who was trying to balance impossible responsibilities," Henry said. "I should have understood that. I should have supported you instead of judging you. Dad, I've made a lot of money in the past 5 years, but I would give up every penny to have you back in my life. And I've learned that money means nothing if you don't have family to share it with." Maria wiped tears from her eyes as she listened to the conversation. This was why she had made the right choice in not calling Robert herself. This reconciliation needed to happen naturally, when both men were ready for it. But then she heard something that made her heart stop. "Dad, there's something I need to tell you about the woman who found you. About Maria." "What about her?" "She's been paying for your medical treatment. She guaranteed payment for bills that total almost $50,000. She's bankrupted herself to save a stranger." There was a long silence. Then Henry's voice, filled with shock and guilt. "She told me not to worry about the money. She said she would find a way to pay for it. Dad, she works part-time as a nurse. She's been studying to become a doctor, but she can't afford medical school. She has almost nothing, and she gave up what little she had to save your life." "Oh, Maria," Henry whispered, "what have you done?" "She's done something extraordinary," Robert said. "She's shown me what real kindness looks like, what real sacrifice means. Dad, I want to give her the $10 million reward, but I also want to do more than that." "What do you mean?" "I want to pay for her medical school. I want to set up a foundation in her name to help other people the way she helped you. I want to make sure she never has to worry about money again." "Son, that's a wonderful idea. But there's something you should know about Maria." "What?" "She knew who I was." Maria's heart stopped. She pressed her ear closer to the door. "What do you mean?" Robert asked. "She found a photograph in my jacket when I collapsed. A picture of you and me at the company. She figured out that I was your father, but she never called you. Even when she was drowning in debt, even when she knew that one phone call could solve all her problems, she kept her promise to me. She knew about the reward and didn't claim it? She didn't know about the reward, but she knew who you were. She knew you could pay my medical bills without even noticing the expense. But she honored my wishes and kept my secret." There was another long silence. Then Robert's voice, filled with amazement. "Dad, I think we need to do more than just give her money. I think we need to make sure the whole world knows what kind of person Maria Johnson really is." "What do you have in mind?" "I have an idea. But first, I need to ask you something important." "What's that, son?" "Will you come home with me? Will you let me take care of you the way you once took care of me? I don't want to be a burden. You could never be a burden. You're my father. You're the most important person in my life. And I've missed you every single day for 5 years. Maria heard Henry crying again. Yes, he whispered. Yes, I'll come home. And Dad. Yes. Will you help me with something? Will you help me find a way to thank Maria Johnson that's worthy of what she's done for us? I'd be honored to help you with that. Maria stood outside the door, tears streaming down her face, as she listened to a father and son rebuilding their relationship. She had helped heal a broken family, and now they wanted to help heal her broken dreams. But she had no idea that their gratitude was about to become bigger than anything she could have imagined. She had no idea that in just a few hours, her simple act of kindness was going to make headlines around the world. And she had no idea that the Harrison family was about to change her life in ways that would shock even them. The biggest surprise was still to come. 1 week later, Maria stood in her tiny apartment bathroom, looking at herself in the cracked mirror. She had no idea that in exactly 2 hours, she would be standing in front of cameras and microphones, about to become the most famous person in America. She had no idea that the Harrison family had spent the entire week planning something that would change not just her life, but the lives of thousands of people she had never met. And she had no idea that her simple act of kindness was about to start a movement that would spread across the entire world. All she knew was that Henry had been released from the hospital 3 days ago and had moved back in with his son. The medical bills had been paid in full, though she still didn't know how. And today, Robert Harrison Jr. had called and asked her to meet him at Harrison Enterprises for what he called a small thank you. Maria put on her best dress, the one she wore to job interviews, and took the bus downtown. As she walked toward the Harrison Enterprises building, she noticed something strange. There were news vans everywhere, dozens of them. Reporters with cameras were standing on every corner. Police officers were directing traffic around the building. And there was a huge crowd of people gathered in the street, all looking up at the building. Maria's heart started pounding. Something big was happening, but she had no idea what. She walked up to the security guard at the main entrance. "Excuse me," she said. "I have an appointment with Mr. Harrison." The security guard looked at her name on his list and his eyes went wide. "Ms. Johnson," he said with excitement. "Everyone's been waiting for you. Please, come right this way." "What's going on up there?" she asked. The security guard smiled mysteriously. "You'll see in just a moment, ma'am." When the elevator doors opened, Maria gasped. The entire top floor of Harrison Enterprises had been transformed. There were flowers everywhere. Balloons hung from the ceiling. A huge banner stretched across the room that read, "Thank you, Maria Johnson, the Angel of Chicago." And standing in the center of the room were Henry and Robert Harrison Jr., both wearing huge smiles. "Maria," Henry called out, walking toward her with open arms. He looked healthier and happier than she had ever seen him. "Welcome to your celebration." "My celebration?" Maria asked, confused. "I don't understand." "You will in just a moment," Robert said, taking her hand. "Maria, there are some people here who want to meet you." That's when Maria noticed that the room was full of people. Business leaders, politicians, reporters, and dozens of other people she didn't recognize. "What is this?" she asked, feeling overwhelmed. "This," said a familiar voice behind her, "is what happens when real kindness meets real gratitude." Maria turned around and nearly fainted. Standing behind her was the mayor of Chicago, the governor of Illinois, and a woman she recognized from television as a famous news anchor. "Ms. Johnson," the mayor said, stepping forward. "I'm Mayor Patricia Collins. I've heard about what you did for Mr. Harrison, and I wanted to personally thank you on behalf of the entire city of Chicago." "But I just did what anyone would do," Maria protested. "No," the governor said, joining the conversation. "You did what almost no one would do. In a world where people walk past those in need, you stopped. In a world where people are motivated by money, you were motivated by compassion. You are exactly the kind of person we need more of in this world." Maria looked around the room in amazement. She still didn't understand why all these important people were here. Maria, Robert said, taking her arm. There's something we need to tell you. Something we've been planning all week. He led her to the center of the room, where a small stage had been set up. Henry joined them, and together the three of them stood in front of the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert announced, I want to tell you about the most remarkable person I have ever met. The room fell silent. 1 week ago, my father collapsed on a busy Chicago street. Hundreds of people walked past him without stopping. They saw an old homeless man and decided he wasn't worth their time or attention. Robert's voice grew stronger. But Maria Johnson saw something different. She saw a human being who needed help. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know if he could ever repay her kindness. She just knew that he needed help, and that was enough. The crowd murmured with appreciation. Maria spent her own money to buy my father food when she barely had enough for herself. She rode with him in the ambulance when he collapsed. She guaranteed payment for his medical treatment even though it meant bankrupting herself. Robert paused and looked directly at Maria. And when she discovered who my father really was, when she realized that one phone call could solve all her financial problems, she kept her promise to him and remained silent. The crowd gasped. They had heard about the reward, but they hadn't known about Maria's sacrifice. But that's not the most remarkable part, Robert continued. The most remarkable part is that when I offered her the $10 million reward for finding my father, she turned it down. Maria's eyes went wide. I did not. You never actually offered. I offered it to you in the hospital, Robert said with a smile. I told you I wanted to give you the reward because you were the one who deserved it. Do you remember what you said? Maria thought back to that conversation. I said I needed to talk to Henry first. And then you spent an hour convincing my father to reconcile with me instead of asking him if you could accept the money. You put our family's healing above your own financial needs. The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. So today, Robert said, his voice filling with emotion, my father and I want to do something that we hope will inspire others to follow Maria's example. He gestured to Henry, who stepped forward. Maria Johnson, Henry said, his voice clear and strong. You saved my life in every way a person can be saved. You fed me when I was hungry. You cared for me when I was sick. You protected me when I was vulnerable. And most importantly, you helped me find my way back to my son. Henry's eyes filled with tears. There is no amount of money that could repay what you've done for our family. But we want to try. Robert stepped forward again. Maria, my father and I have decided to do several things. First, we are establishing the Maria Johnson Foundation for Human Kindness, with an initial funding of $50 million. Maria felt dizzy. $50 million? This foundation will provide food, shelter, and medical care for homeless individuals throughout Chicago. It will also provide college scholarships for young people who demonstrate exceptional kindness and compassion, just like you did. The crowd erupted in applause, but Robert wasn't finished. Second, we are fully funding your medical school education, including living expenses, so that you can become the doctor you've always dreamed of being. Maria started crying. Her lifelong dream was suddenly within reach. But that's still not enough, Henry said, taking over. We've been thinking about what you said to me that first day we met. Do you remember? Maria wiped her tears and thought back. I said that everyone deserves to be seen. Everyone deserves to matter. Exactly. So we're creating the Everyone Matters initiative. We're asking people across the country to look for someone in their community who needs help, someone who might be invisible to everyone else, and do something kind for them. We're providing $1 million in grants to fund these acts of kindness, Robert added. But more importantly, we're asking people to share their stories, to inspire others to see the Maria Johnson in themselves. The famous news anchor stepped forward with a microphone. Ms. Johnson, this story has already started spreading across social media. People are calling you the Angel of Chicago. How does it feel to know that your kindness has inspired all of this? Maria looked around the room at all the faces staring at her. Important people, powerful people, people who could change the world with their decisions. And they were all here because she had shared her bread with a hungry old man. I don't feel like an angel, she said honestly. I just feel like someone who did what felt right at the time. But that's exactly what makes you special, the mayor said. You didn't think about rewards or recognition. You just saw someone who needed help and you helped them. Everyone keeps saying I'm special, Maria said, her voice getting stronger. But I'm not. There are people all over this city, all over this country, who show kindness every single day. Teachers who spend their own money on school supplies. Neighbors who check on elderly people. Volunteers who serve food at shelters. The only difference is that my kindness got noticed. The room was completely quiet, everyone hanging on her words. If you really want to honor what I did, Maria continued, then don't just give money to a foundation. Look around your own neighborhoods. See the people who are invisible. The homeless veteran on the corner. The single mother struggling to pay for groceries. The elderly person who hasn't had a visitor in months. Maria's voice grew passionate. True kindness isn't about getting credit or recognition. It's about seeing someone who needs help and helping them, even when no one is watching, even when you can't afford to, even when it's inconvenient. The crowd erupted in the loudest applause Maria had ever heard. People were crying, cheering, and clapping so hard their hands hurt. But the biggest surprise was still to come. The famous news anchor stepped forward again. Ms. Johnson, there's one more thing. This entire event is being broadcast live on national television. Your message about kindness is being heard by millions of people across the country right now. Maria's mouth fell open. Live television? And that's not all, Robert said with a huge grin. We've received over 10,000 messages in the past hour from people who want to participate in the Everyone Matters initiative. People are already going out into their communities to find someone to help. Henry pulled out his phone and showed Maria the screen. Look at this hashtag. Hashtag Everyone Matters. It's trending #1 worldwide. Maria stared at the screen as message after message scrolled by. Just bought lunch for a homeless woman. Hashtag Everyone Matters. Visiting my elderly neighbor every day this week. Hashtag Everyone Matters. Starting a food drive at my school. Hashtag Everyone Matters. Teaching my kids that kindness is the most important thing. Hashtag Everyone Matters. This is incredible, Maria whispered. This is just the beginning, Robert said. Maria, you have started something that could change the world. Your simple act of kindness has inspired millions of people to look for ways to help others. The news anchor held up her microphone again. Ms. Johnson, do you have a message for all those people who are watching right now? Maria looked directly into the camera, thinking about all the people across the country who were listening to her words. My message is simple, she said. You don't have to be rich to be kind. You don't have to be famous to make a difference. Every single person has the power to change someone's life, just by caring enough to try. She paused, thinking about Henry sitting alone on that bench, forgotten by the world. Look around you. Really look. See the people who are struggling, who are lonely, who are invisible. And then do something about it. It doesn't have to be big. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness have the biggest impact. What if people say they can't afford to help? The news anchor asked. Kindness doesn't cost money, Maria replied. A smile costs nothing. A conversation costs nothing. Helping someone carry their groceries costs nothing. Checking on your elderly neighbor costs nothing. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can give someone is your time and attention. Any final words for our viewers? Maria thought about everything that had happened in the past week. A simple decision to share her bread with a hungry man had led to this moment, standing in front of millions of people, inspiring them to be kind. Everyone matters, she said simply. Every single person you meet is fighting battles you know nothing about. Every person deserves to be seen, to be valued, to be treated with dignity and respect. When we start treating every person like they matter, the world becomes a better place for all of us. The crowd erupted in applause one final time, but Maria barely heard it. She was thinking about all the people watching on television, all the people who might be inspired to help someone today because of her story. As the cameras stopped rolling and the crowd began to disperse, Henry and Robert walked over to Maria. "So," Henry said with a twinkle in his eye, "how does it feel to accidentally start a worldwide movement?" "Overwhelming," Maria admitted, "but also wonderful. If my story can inspire even one person to help someone else, then everything that happened was worth it." "One person," Robert laughed. "Maria, we've already received over 50,000 messages from people participating in the Everyone Matters initiative. News stations across the country are doing stories about acts of kindness in their communities. Schools are organizing kindness projects. Businesses are creating volunteer programs. And it's spreading to other countries too," Henry added. "I just got a message from a friend in London who says the hashtag is trending there as well." Maria shook her head in amazement. "I still can't believe all this started because I shared my bread with a hungry man." "No," Henry said gently. "It started because you have a good heart. The bread was just how you showed it." 6 months later, Maria was in her first year of medical school, studying to become the doctor she had always dreamed of being. The Maria Johnson Foundation had helped over 5,000 homeless individuals find food, shelter, and medical care. The Everyone Matters initiative had inspired millions of acts of kindness around the world. And every morning, before she went to class, Maria would stop by the bench where she had first met Henry. Sometimes there was someone sitting there who looked hungry or lonely, and when there was, she would sit down and talk with them just like she had done with Henry. Because Maria had learned something important from everything that had happened. True kindness isn't a one-time act. It's a way of living. It's choosing, again and again, to see the worth in every person you meet. And when you live that way, you don't just change the lives of the people you help. You change the world. Moral lesson: true humanity shines when we help those who can't repay us. The greatest rewards in life come not from what we receive, but from what we give to others without expecting anything in return. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to change lives and inspire others to spread compassion throughout the world.